Thank God! This incredible HFY masterpiece found you today. Witness the legend, starting now.
The Galactic Council banned all weapons to make the trial fair. They didn't realize the human didn't bring a weapon. She was the weapon. Look, I have been doing this job for 17 standard cycles now, and I thought I had seen everything. Every species, every trick, every desperate attempt to cheat the system. My name is Thrall Kex, Senior Observer for the Galactic Council's Proving Grounds, and let me tell you something. I have watched over 400 trials. 400. You know how many times someone has completed the course without weapons? Twice. And both of those competitors were Krethian battle worms, who, quite frankly, are basically living weapons anyway, so the whole no-weapons rule was really just a technicality for them. But this was going to be different. This was going to be, and I cannot stress this enough, absolutely hilarious. The Proving Grounds exist for one reason: to settle disputes without starting wars. Brilliant idea. Really. Two factions have a problem. They each send a champion. The champions fight it out in a series of challenges, and boom, problem solved. No fleets destroyed, no planets glassed, no diplomatic incidents, just good old-fashioned brutal competition. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, decided centuries ago that allowing weapons would make things too quick, too boring, too impersonal. So the rule was simple. You walk in with nothing but yourself. No blasters, no blades, no plasma whips, no molecular disruptors, just your body and whatever evolution blessed you with. This kept things interesting, you understand. Species with natural armor had advantages. Those with venom glands, retractable claws, enhanced strength, or acid spit. Even better. The Proving Grounds favored the naturally dangerous, which made sense because, well, the galaxy is a naturally dangerous place. So when the human delegation arrived to settle their trade dispute with the Yorick clans, and they sent her as their champion, I actually laughed. Out loud. Right there in the observation deck. My assistant, Plix, a nervous little Quintari who is always worried about offending someone, looked at me with those 6 eyes all wide and whispered that maybe I should show more professionalism. I told Plix to relax. I mean, come on. A human. Humans are the galaxy's newcomers. The soft-skinned primates who only just figured out faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They are not warriors. They are merchants, diplomats, engineers maybe. They build things, they talk a lot. They drink terrible beverages, they call coffee that smells like burnt regret. But fighters, please. Her name was Kira Voss, and she stood maybe 1.7 meters tall. That is short, by the way. Most species in the trial today were pushing 2.5 meters minimum. She had dark hair pulled back in something humans call a ponytail, which struck me as impractical. Brown skin, lean build, and these strange focused eyes that did not seem particularly concerned about anything. She wore the standard trial suit, a light gray bodysuit that offered zero protection but made sure everyone was on equal footing, clothing-wise. No hidden pockets, no secret compartments, nothing but fabric. The Yorick champion, on the other hand, was a sight to behold. Gorthak the Render, they called him. 2.8 meters of solid muscle, covered in natural bone plating that could deflect most small arms' fire. 4 arms, each ending in claws that could punch through starship hull plating. The Yorick were proud, aggressive, and very, very good at killing things. Gorthak had won 3 previous trials. 3. He was a legend. Standing next to him in the preparation chamber were 4 other species champions, all volunteers who had joined the trial to test themselves. Because the Council allows that, makes for better entertainment. Honestly, there was Vrek, a Silthari with 6 limbs and reflexes so fast they could snatch bullets out of the air. There was Ornath, a crystalline Voltrex whose body could shift from solid to near liquid at will. The others were equally impressive, a Dravaxian with acid blood, and a Korath whose species were literally bred for combat over 10,000 years. And then there was Kira Voss, who looked like she had just wandered in from a library. The other champions barely acknowledged her. Why would they? She had no claws, no armor, no venom, no apparent genetic modifications. Humans are not even that strong compared to most species. I checked her file before the trial. Apparently she had some military background in something called the Marine Corps. But honestly, how impressive could human military training be? They only just stopped fighting wars with chemical propellant weapons a few decades ago. I settled into my observation throne, activated the recording systems, and prepared for what I assumed would be a very short, very sad performance from the human. Clix offered me refreshments. I waved them away. This would not take long enough to need snacks. The trial master's voice boomed across the arena. Champions, the proving grounds await. No weapons, no mercy, only victory. Gorthak roared, slamming his 4 fists together in a display meant to intimidate. Kira Voss just rolled her shoulders and cracked her neck. I remember thinking, oh, this poor stupid human does not even understand what she has walked into. Turns out, I was the stupid one. The arena floor was vast, easily 200 meters across, with various obstacles and challenge zones scattered throughout like some demented playground designed by sadists. Which, to be fair, it basically was. The council hired specialists to make sure competitors really earned their victories. Let me paint you a picture of what Kira Voss was up against, because context matters here. First, Gorthik the Render, the Yorick champion I mentioned. Close up, he was even more terrifying. Those bone plates covering his body were not just for show. They were layered, overlapping, and had been hardened through years of combat. His people evolved on a death world where everything, and I mean everything, tried to kill you from birth. Yorick children fight carnivorous plants before they learn to speak. Gorthik's 4 arms rippled with muscle that could bench press a small spacecraft, and those claws, each one was serrated. Natural weapons honed over millions of years of evolution. The Yorick diplomatic envoy was watching from the gallery, looking smug. They had every right to be. Gorthik was unstoppable. Then there was Vrek the Silthari. Now, the Silthari are fascinating in a horrifying sort of way. 6 limbs, as I said. But here is the fun part. 4 of those limbs end in manipulator claws that can move independently with enough precision to assemble microscopic machinery and enough strength to crush titanium. Their reflexes operate on a neurological level that most species cannot even process. They perceive time differently, you understand. What looks like a split second to us is leisurely contemplation to them. Vrek's exoskeleton had this beautiful purple sheen to it, and those compound eyes tracked everything simultaneously. No blind spots. No. Ornath, the Voltrex, was standing near the eastern gate, and their body was already doing that unsettling shimmer thing. Voltrex are silicon-based, crystalline beings who can shift their molecular density at will. Solid as diamond one moment, flowing like mercury the next. How do you fight something that can turn intangible when you swing at it, then resolidify their fist inside your chest cavity? You do not. That is the answer. The Voltrex had sent Ornath as a show of good faith for some treaty negotiation, but everyone knew they just wanted to remind the council why you do not mess with crystalline species. The Dravatian, whose name was Sklis, looked like someone had crossed a lizard with a nightmare and then given it a bad attitude. 2.3 meters of scaled muscle, with a tail that could break bones, and, here is the best part, acid for blood. You cut Sklis, and you get a face full of molecular corrosive that will melt your face off. Literally. Their species developed this as a defense mechanism against predators, and it works really, really well. Sklis kept hissing, which I am pretty sure was their version of laughing. Finally, there was Korvan, the Korath. The Korath are what happens when a species decides that natural evolution is taking too long and starts genetically modifying themselves for warfare. 10,000 years of selective breeding and gene manipulation had created the perfect soldier species: enhanced muscle density, reinforced skeletal structure, redundant organs, accelerated healing, and a pain tolerance that would make a rock seem sensitive. Korvan stood quiet, focused, radiating that calm confidence that comes from knowing you are a biological weapon. And then there was Kira Voss. She was stretching, touching her toes, rotating her wrists, doing these little jumps that made her look like she was warming up for a jog, not a life-or-death trial. Her skin had no armor plating. Her hands had no claws. She had no venom glands, no acid blood, no ability to phase through matter. She was just soft, vulnerable, fragile. In the observation gallery, I heard someone laugh. It was the Yorick envoy. He leaned over to his companion and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "The human will not survive the first challenge. This is an insult to the proving grounds." Several other delegates nodded in agreement. Clix whispered to me, "Should we stop this? She seems unprepared." I shook my head. The trial had been legally sanctioned. Both sides agreed. If the humans wanted to send an inadequate champion, that was their problem. Besides, the medical teams were standing by. She would be fine. Injured. Probably. Humiliated. Certainly. But fine. The trial master raised all four of his arms, and the crowd fell silent. Let the proving grounds begin. The gates opened, and I leaned forward, ready to watch the human fail spectacularly. Spoiler alert, that is not what happened. The first challenge was simple. Climb the ascension wall. A vertical cliff face, 60 meters straight up, made of reinforced composite material that was deliberately designed to offer minimal handholds. At the top, a platform with 6 glowing markers. Touch your marker, you advance, fall, and you get eliminated. Medical teams would scrape you off the arena floor and you go home in shame. The wall was not meant to be easy. It was meant to separate the competent from the exceptional, and it did that job beautifully. The starting horn blared, and the competitors moved. Gorthak simply dug his claws into the wall material like it was wet clay. That bone plating was not just defensive, apparently. Those claws had enough force behind them to pierce the composite, and he hauled himself upward with all 4 arms in this terrifyingly efficient rhythm. Chunk, 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 chunk. He was making steady progress, and the wall was groaning under the punishment. Rick was faster. Of course Rick was faster. The Silthari spotted a route up the wall that used the minimal handholds, calculated the optimal path in microseconds, and started ascending like gravity was a polite suggestion rather than a law of physics. Those 6 limbs moved in perfect coordination, finding grips I could barely see from my observation quotient. Beautiful, really. Horrifying, but beautiful. Ornath just cheated. I mean, technically, it was not cheating, but it felt like cheating. The Voltrex shifted their body density down, became almost weightless, and simply flowed up the wall like liquid climbing uphill. They solidified at handholds just long enough to push upward, then went fluid again. It was mesmerizing and deeply unfair. Sklis, the Drivaxin, had retractable climbing claws in their feet and hands that I had not noticed before. Sneaky. They went up the wall at an angle, using their tail for balance, moving with the confidence of a species that evolved climbing trees filled with things that wanted to eat them. Corvin, the Korath, was pure efficiency. Enhanced muscle fiber meant every movement was optimized for maximum upward momentum with minimum energy expenditure. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Just smooth, relentless progress. 10,000 years of genetic modification on display. And Kira Voss? She looked at the wall for maybe 3 seconds, tilted her head like she was solving a math problem, and then did something I did not expect. She ran at it. Not climbed. Ran. She sprinted at the wall, hit it at speed, took 3 running steps vertically up the surface, pushed off, twisted in midair, grabbed a handhold that was 4 meters above the starting point, swung her body, released, grabbed another hole, and suddenly she was 10 meters up before the others had gone 15. What in the name of the Council's 7 hells was that? Plix made a choking sound beside me. Did the human just— Yeah, I said, sitting up straighter in my throne. Yeah, she did. Kira was not climbing like the others. She was using momentum, using these explosive jumps between holds that should not have been possible. Humans do not have enhanced leg strength. Their muscle density is average at best, but somehow she was launching herself upward in these controlled bursts, catching holds, swinging, releasing, and doing it all with this casual precision that suggested she had done this approximately 10,000 times before. She passed Skles at the 20-meter mark. The Dravaxian hissed in surprise, nearly lost their grip. At 30 meters she was neck and neck with Korvan, who glanced over at her with what I can only describe as confusion. The perfect warrior, genetically designed for this exact scenario, and a human was keeping pace. Ornath reached the top first, obviously. Fluid dynamics for the win. But Vrek was second, and then, and I still cannot quite believe this, Kira Voss pulled herself onto the platform in 3rd place. 3rd. Out of 6 competitors. Gorthak arrived 4th, breathing hard, looking annoyed. Corfine was 5th, and Sklis barely made it in 6th, looking absolutely furious. The crowd had gone very, very quiet. Kira stood on the platform, barely winded, and stretched her arms above her head like she had just finished a light workout. Her heart rate, displayed on the biometric monitors we use for medical safety, was elevated but not dangerously so. She was not panicking, not exhausted, not even particularly concerned. I looked at Plix. Plix looked at me. Okay, I said slowly. So maybe the human is not completely useless. The Yorick envoy had stopped laughing. He was leaning forward in his seat now, paying attention. The trial master's voice echoed across the arena. First challenge complete. Advancing competitors, proceed to the combat rings. Oh, good. Combat. Surely the human would fail there. Right? I was significantly less confident than I had been 10 minutes ago, and that was a very uncomfortable feeling. The combat rings are exactly what they sound like, and they are not complicated. 6 circular platforms, each 10 meters in diameter, suspended over a very, very long drop into a safety net that you really do not want to test. The rules are simple: fight your randomly assigned opponent until one of you submits, gets knocked out, or falls off the platform. No killing, but everything else is fair game. The computer system randomly generates matchups. It is supposed to be impartial, but I swear the thing has a sense of humor, because the first pairing it displayed made me laugh out loud. Kira Voss versus Skliss the Drevasian, the lizard with acid blood against the unarmed human. This was going to be a massacre, and not in the human's favor. Skliss was already hissing with what I assumed was satisfaction, flexing those claws, that tail whipping back and forth in anticipation. The Dravaxians stepped onto their assigned platform with the confidence of someone who knew they had already won. Acid blood is a cheat code in hand-to-hand combat. You cannot hurt Skliss without hurting yourself worse. It is basic biochemistry. Kira walked onto her platform, rolled her shoulders again, that same casual gesture, and settled into this stance that looked wrong. Her feet were positioned oddly, her weight distributed in a way that seemed off balance, and her hands were up but open, not clenched into fists. The starting bell rang. Skliss lunged immediately, claws extended, going for a quick slash across Kira's torso that would have opened her up and ended the fight in seconds. Kira was not there anymore. She moved, and I do not have a better word for it. She just moved. Shifted her weight, turned her hips, and suddenly she was beside Skliss, instead of in front of Skliss, and her hand, just her bare hand, chopped into the side of the Dravaxian's neck. Skliss staggered. Actually staggered. The crowd gasped. You do not make a Dravaxian stagger with a bare-handed strike. Their scales are too thick, their musculature too dense. It should not be possible. But Kira had not hit the scales. She had hit the gap between scales, right where the neck articulates, right where the nerve cluster sits, and she had hit it with enough force and precision that Skliss's entire left side went momentarily numb. Skliss roared, spun with that tail whipping around at knee height, a move that has broken legs in previous trials. Kira jumped. Not a big jump, just enough to let the tail pass under her feet, and when she landed, she was already moving forward, inside Skliss's guard. What happened next took maybe 3 seconds, but I have watched the replay approximately 50 times, and I still cannot quite believe it. Kira grabbed Skliss's extended arm, the one with the claws, and twisted. Not just twisted, but used her whole body as leverage, stepping in, turning her hips, and suddenly the Dravaxian was off balance. Then her other hand struck, palm heel to the jaw hinge, and Skliss's head snapped sideways. Another strike, elbow to the solar plexus, right between the scale plates. A knee to the inside thigh, targeting another nerve cluster. Every single hit was surgical, precise, aimed at the gaps in natural armor, at vulnerable joints, at nerve bundles. Skliss tried to bleed on her. That is literally their strategy. Get cut, spray acid blood on your opponent, and watch them dissolve. But Kira was not cutting Skliss. She was hitting pressure points, joint locks, nerve strikes. Nothing that broke the skin, nothing that would trigger that acid defense. It was clinical. It was efficient. It was absolutely brutal. Skliss went down hard, hit the platform, and did not get back up. Unconscious. The Dravaxian did not submit, did not fall off, just got knocked out cold by a human using nothing but her hands. The arena went silent, completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop, if pins made noise in zero gravity, which they do not, but you understand the metaphor. The medical team rushed onto the platform to check Skliss's vitals. Alive, thankfully. Concussed, definitely. Humiliated, absolutely. Kira stood there, breathing slightly harder now, and shook out her hands like she had just finished a sparring session at the gym. Plix was making this high-pitched wheezing sound that I think was supposed to be breathing. She used her hands, Plix whispered. The trial forbade weapons, and the human used her hands. Yeah, I said, unable to look away from the monitor. Turns out human hands are weapons. The other matches were finishing up. Gorthak had battered Corvin off the platform through sheer overwhelming force, though the Korath had made him work for it. Rek had outmaneuvered Ornath in a contest of speed versus fluidity that was actually impressive to watch. But everyone, and I mean everyone, was talking about the human. The Uruk envoy was no longer smiling. He was leaning forward, all four of his arms gripping the gallery railing, staring at Kira like he was trying to figure out if she was secretly wearing some kind of invisible exoskeleton. She was not, I checked multiple times. She was just a human who apparently knew exactly how to dismantle an opponent twice her size with nothing but technique and an alarming understanding of alien physiology. One of the council members activated a private channel to my station. Observer Kex, do we have the humans' training records? I pulled up her file again, read through it more carefully this time. Military service, yes. Something called Combatives Instructor. Hand-to-hand combat specialist. Multiple discipline training and things with names like Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and about 15 other systems I could not pronounce. Oh no. Humans had apparently spent their entire evolutionary history fighting each other, and they had gotten very, very good at it. They had codified it, systematized it, created entire martial arts dedicated to efficiently destroying opponents with minimal tool, and they had done all of this before they ever left their planet. We had led an apex predator that specialized in unarmed combat into a no-weapons trial. The trial master's voice boomed out, "Second challenge complete. Advancing competitors proceed to the maze of shadows." Kira walked off the platform, still calm, still focused, and I felt a creeping sense of dread settling into my thorax. This human was dangerous. Not in spite of having no natural weapons, because she did not need them. The maze of shadows is not really a maze. Well, it is. But that is not the point. The point is psychological warfare. The Council designed it to test mental fortitude, adaptability, and how well you handle having your deepest fears weaponized against you. It uses holographic projections, sensory manipulation, and environmental hazards to create scenarios that exploit species-specific phobias and weaknesses. It is nasty, effective, and absolutely miserable to watch. 3 competitors remained: Gorthak, Rek, and Kira Voss. They entered the maze from different points, and the objective was simple: reach the center, claim your token, and get out. First one out advances directly to the final challenge. The other 2 have to fight each other for the second spot. I pulled up the internal monitoring feeds, and immediately I could see the maze doing its job. Gorthak entered a corridor that suddenly flooded with a holographic projection of Yorick hatchlings, screaming. For his species, failure means your genetic line ends in shame. Your offspring are cast out, and your name is erased from the clan records. The maze was showing him that future. The hatchlings were crying out, blaming him, and even though Gorthak knew it was not real, I could see his forearms trembling. He pushed forward, but slower now, hesitant. Psychological damage already taking effect. Rek had it worse. The Siltheri corridor filled with thick, obscuring smoke. Now the Siltheri rely on visual input from their compound eyes. Their entire perception of reality depends on seeing, blind them, and they panic. Rek was moving erratically now, bumping into walls, those 6 limbs flailing, trying to find purchase on something, anything. The maze was not even using complex fear tactics. It just took away their primary sense, and that was enough. Then there was Kira. Her corridors started filling with projections of humans. Dead humans. Wounded humans. Screaming humans. Classic trauma imagery designed to trigger protective instincts and survivor guilt. The maze had clearly done its research on human psychology. Kira stopped walking. She looked at the projections, those holographic bodies, and I waited for the fear response, the hesitation, the psychological break. She closed her eyes, just closed them, took a deep breath, and walked forward with her eyes shut. What? Is the human navigating blind? Plix asked, watching the same feed I was. She was. Kira had her right hand trailing along the wall, feeling for texture changes, listening for acoustic shifts that indicated open spaces or corners. She was counting her steps, mapping the maze in her head using nothing but spatial awareness and tactile feedback. The maze threw more projections at her. Flames, floods, collapsing ceilings, standard fear responses. She ignored all of it. kept walking, eyes closed, one hand on the wall, steady breathing. Then the maze adapted. It started throwing physical obstacles. Walls that moved, floors that tilted, temperature changes designed to disorient. Kira stumbled once, caught herself, adjusted her approach. When the floor tilted, she dropped to a crouch, lowered her center of gravity, and kept moving. When walls shifted, she listened for the mechanical sounds and timed her movements. She opened her eyes only when she needed visual confirmation of a physical obstacle, then closed them again to shut out the psychological attacks. It was the most ridiculous, effective, and somehow brilliant thing I had ever seen. Humans, I was learning, are adaptation specialists. They are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most naturally armed, but they are really, really good at figuring out what works and doing that thing until the problem is solved. No pride, no ego, just results. Gorthik was still fighting his holographic nightmares, making progress but clearly rattled. Vrek had found a wall and was following it, slowly regaining composure now that they had a tactile reference point. And Kira reached the center first. She grabbed her token, a small crystalline marker, and then did something that made my blood run cold. She stopped, looked at the remaining 2 corridors leading out, evaluated them for maybe 5 seconds, and chose the path that looked harder, not the easy exit, the difficult one. Because I realized with growing horror, she was training. Even here in the middle of a trial that could kill her, the human was using this as practice, testing herself, pushing boundaries. She navigated a corridor filled with platforms that collapsed on timers, jumped gaps that required split-second timing, and climbed over barriers that were meant to be nearly impossible. And she did it all with this focused calm that suggested she had done worse before breakfast. Kira emerged from the maze first, holding her token barely scratched. Gorthak came out second, looking shaken, his bone plate scratched from where he had charged through obstacles in frustration. Vrek was third, compound eyes still twitching from the smoke trauma. The trial master announced, Kira Voss advances to the final challenge. Gorthak the Render and Vrek will compete for the second position. I did not even watch that fight. I was too busy staring at the human who was sitting on a bench, drinking water from a dispenser, looking like she had just finished a mildly interesting afternoon activity. Plex leaned over and whispered, Observer Kex, I think we made a mistake. What mistake? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Assuming humans were harmless, Gorthak won his fight against Vrek, brute strength versus speed, and strength won through sheer persistence. But nobody was talking about that fight. Everyone in the gallery, every council member, every envoy, was talking about the human who had shut her eyes and walked through a nightmare like it was a minor inconvenience. The final challenge was announced. Kira Voss versus Gorthik the Render, 1-on-1. In the arena of judgment, the Yorick envoy was no longer looking smug. He was looking worried. I was looking terrified, because I had just realized something very important about humans. They do not quit. They do not break. You can throw everything at them, and they just adapt, adjust, and keep coming. And Kira Voss was about to prove exactly how dangerous that trait really was. The arena of judgment is a flat circle, 30 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers. No rules except one. Last person standing wins. You can submit verbally at any time and the barriers will separate you before things get fatal. But if you go unconscious, you lose. If you cannot stand, you lose. If you leave the circle, you lose. Gorthak stood on one side, all 2.8 meters of him, forearms flexing, bone plates gleaming under the arena lights. 3-time champion, veteran of dozens of combat trials, a living testament to Yorick superiority. Kira stood on the other side, 1.7 meters of human, no armor, no claws, no natural weapons, just flesh, bone, and whatever was going on inside that terrifyingly calm brain of hers. The size difference was comical. Gorthak outweighed her by at least 100 kilograms, probably more. His reach advantage was absurd. One solid hit from those clawed fists would end the fight instantly. The Yorick envoy was shouting encouragement. The human delegation was silent, watching with expressions I could not quite read. The starting bell rang. Gorthak charged. Of course he charged. It is the Yorick way. Overwhelming force, direct confrontation, established dominance immediately. All 4 arms spread wide to grab, crush, and finish this. Kira did not retreat. She moved laterally, angling off to Gorthak's left, forcing him to adjust mid-charge. When he swung with his primary right arm, She ducked under it, stepped inside his guard, and drove her elbow into the gap where his bone plates met at the hip joint. Gorthak grunted. Actually grunted. That had hurt. He spun faster than something his size should be able to spin, and his secondary left arm caught Kira across the shoulder, sent her rolling across the arena floor. First solid hit of the fight, and I saw her wince. Good, I thought. She is not invincible. She can be hurt. But she rolled with the momentum, came up in a crouch, and I saw something change in her eyes. Not fear, not pain, something else. Focus. Pure, undiluted focus. Gorthak charged again. Kira waited this time. Waited until he was committed. Until all that mass was moving in one direction, and then she dropped low, swept his laid leg, and used his own momentum against him. You do not trip a Yurok. Their center of gravity is too low, their legs too strong, except Kira had not tried to trip him. She had struck the back of his knee, hyperextended the joint, and suddenly Gorthak was stumbling, off balance for just a fraction of a second. That was all she needed. Kira was on him before he could recover. She climbed him like he was a piece of training equipment, wrapped her legs around his torso, locked her arm around his thick neck in what I later learned humans call a rear naked choke, and squeezed. Gorthak roared, reached back with all four arms trying to pull her off. Those claws raked across her arms drew blood, but she did not let go. She adjusted her grip, sank the choke in deeper, and held on while Gorthak thrashed, spun, tried to slam her into the ground. She took the impacts. I heard ribs crack, heard her gasp in pain, but her arms stayed locked around his neck. Here is something about human anatomy that I did not know before this fight. They have incredible grip strength for their size. Something about their evolution, climbing trees, using tools, whatever, and they have this thing called adrenaline that lets them ignore pain and perform beyond normal capacity when threatened. Kira was bleeding, probably had broken bones, and was holding on to a creature 3 times her size with nothing but determination and technique. Gorthak's movements were slowing. The choke was cutting off blood flow to his brain. He dropped to one knee, then both knees. His forearms were still trying to pull her off, but weaker now, less coordinated. "Submit," Kira said. Voice strained but clear. "Just submit." Gorthak made a sound that might have been a refusal. His pride would not allow it, so Kira held on. Held on until Gorthak's arms dropped, until his body went limp, until the medical sensors screamed that he was losing consciousness. The barrier flashed. The trial master called it. Winner Kira Voss, human champion. Kira released the choke, rolled off Gorthak's back, and collapsed onto the arena floor, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen scratches, holding her ribs with one arm. Medical teams rushed in from both sides. The arena was absolutely silent. Thousands of spectators, dozens of species, and not one sound. A human had just defeated a 3-time Yorick champion using nothing but her hands, her knowledge, and her sheer refusal to quit. The Yorick envoy looked like someone had struck him with a neural disruptor. His mouth was hanging open, all 4 of his eyes wide with disbelief. The human delegation erupted in cheers, and I sat there in my observation throne watching the replay, and realized something that should have been obvious from the start. Humans are not harmless. They are just patient. So here is what I learned that day, watching Kira Voss get carried out of the arena on a medical stretcher, smiling despite 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and enough lacerations to decorate a particularly violent art installation. The council created the no-weapons rule to level the playing field. We assumed it would favor species with natural weapons, with claws and venom and armor plating and all those lovely evolutionary advantages that come from millions of years of survival on death worlds. We forgot to account for one thing. Humans are a weapon, not metaphorically, literally. They spent their entire evolutionary history as endurance hunters who chased prey until it died from exhaustion. They survived ice ages, plagues, and predators by being too stubborn to die and too clever to fight fair. They looked at their complete lack of natural weapons and said, "Fine, we will make artificial ones," and then they built everything from sharpened sticks to nuclear warheads. And when you take all of that away, when you say no weapons allowed, they just shrug and use the one weapon they have been refining for thousands of years, themselves. Kira Voss was discharged from medical 3 hours later. The Yorick delegation filed a formal complaint, claiming the human must have used some kind of enhancement. The medical scans came back completely clean. She was just a standard human with training experience and apparently a pain tolerance that would make a Korath jealous. The trade dispute was settled in humanity's favor. Obviously, I have been doing this job for 17 cycles, and I have seen 400 trials, but I am going to remember this one forever, because this is the one where I learned that the most dangerous species in the galaxy is not the one with the biggest claws or the strongest armor. It is the one that does not need them. Plix asked me later if I thought humans would become regular competitors in the proving grounds. I told Plix that I sincerely hoped not, because if they send more like Kira Voss, the rest of the galaxy is going to have to seriously reconsider their definitions of dangerous. The human delegation left the station the next day. I watched their ship depart from the observation deck, and I felt this strange mixture of relief and respect. Relief that they were leaving. Respect because, well, they earned it. Someone asked me later what I would tell future observers about humans. I thought about it for a long time, and then I said, if a human ever enters your trial and you think they are at a disadvantage because they have no natural weapons, remember this, they are the weapon. The trial did not forbid weapons. It just made them use their hands. And then I filed my report, updated the species threat assessment database, and quietly suggested that the council might want to reconsider how they classify humanity. Harmless merchants and diplomats. Please. Those are apex predators with good public relations. And now, if you will excuse me, I need a drink, possibly several. Watching a human dismantle 3 trained killers with nothing but technique and spite is the kind of thing that makes you reconsider your life choices. Plix asked if I was okay. I told Plix I was fine, just experiencing what humans call an existential crisis. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity. Try not to break too many things, or do.